Objection!
Hold it.
Take that.
Hulk smash.
Ow! Man.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome back to our Marvel Plus live reaction series set in our brand new apartment. So yeah, it's been a while. We've been on about a month-long hiatus for, as I mentioned, said move. Clearly a few things are going to be different from here on in. For one, if you're seeing this now, I still do have a backlog, and it was all recorded in our old apartment, hence why those are going to look different from this. Obviously. Another thing is that while we're in a better apartment, we sadly are not in a better noise situation. Because our current apartment at the moment, unfortunately, is near a traffic circle, so you're probably going to hear a lot more cars and motorcycle revvings and other obnoxious noises from time to time. We apologize. We sadly have no control over that. We have the air going, thankfully, to try to drown some of it out, but just so you know, that might be an issue throughout the videos, at least for the next year. Another thing, too, is that we are going to be a little limited from now on in terms of the shows that we watch, because, as I mentioned, we went through a lot for this move. We still have much to do. This setting isn't exactly permanent, per se. There's some things we want to switch up a bit, you know, try to make it look a little more stylish, a little more exciting or whatever, but like I said, for now, we're just trying to unpack our shit and settle in before we do that. But for now, we are going to tackle the shows that, as I mentioned, we do intend to watch. At the moment, we have about 3 shows left in this year. Might be more if any decide to pop up randomly. But for now, the one that we are definitely going to be tackling that we actually have been looking forward to is She-Hulk.
Attorney at law.
Yes, I don't really have any history with She-Hulk, like, sadly, a lot of Marvel heroes. I do remember watching her, though, I believe, on the Iron Man animated series. It was either that or the X-Men that she showed up in. I forget which, but I know I did watch her in one of the animated series.
There was an Incredible Hulk animated series, too, so I think she did show up on that for certain.
I do believe that as well. I always thought it weird that she always just was the Hulk, but she was herself, and she never had to go through anything that, you know, Bruce Banner did. But on the other hand, you know, she was a big, tall, strong woman that nobody would mess with, so that kind of made her cool in my eyes. Any experience you had with She-Hulk?
Your experience is about the same as mine. I think I've seen her in a couple of things, brief appearances in animated series or 2. I might have seen her in, like, when I was reading X-Men. I think she appeared, like, once or twice. But aside from that, yeah, I mean, I didn't know much about her aside from her being an attorney. So this is completely new to me.
Based on what we've seen so far, She-Hulk has been a breath of fresh air. Because no longer do we have to worry about hour-long episodes or things dragging on or stuff being cut for time. Because this is actually like a decent length series, and they're all half-hour episodes. And frankly, I think a lot of the past ones should have been that way. Some of them, not all of them. Like, some of them actually did take advantage of their near hour-long episodes. But after watching Ms. Marvel, I was a little bit hesitant about this, but from what I've seen so far, I think it's a vast improvement. So for starters, we do want to say that for this particular episode, it's not a live reaction. We are just going to do a straight-up review of the first 2 episodes. Because as I mentioned, we did just move in, we only just set up the couch and unpacked these guys, and are still trying to work out our living room arrangement. So in order to make it a little easier on ourselves, we're just going to do straight-up review of the first 2. And I mean, it's not like hour-long episodes, so we can actually get to everything rather concisely within these 2. And it's not like it's that hard to remember what went on with them. The good news is, like, it's not one of those episodes where 10 different things is going on at once. You have the plot in this episode and the plot in this. And I gotta say, I'm rather thankful for that, if I'm being quite honest. So let's get started talking about the first episode, which is titled
A Normal Amount of Rage.
Basically, this is the origin story. As a lot of us mostly know, it features Jennifer Walters, who is the cousin of Bruce Banner. Of course, a lot of us don't exactly know how she got said powers. A lot of people assume, oh, well, she's his cousin. Maybe it's the same thing and she got radiation or whatever. It's not quite that way in this series, though. For starters, aliens. Yes, fucking aliens are the reason this all happened. So it turns out that Bruce does chat with his cousin casually. Turns out Bruce actually has a whole other family we don't frickin' know about up to this point. Because all we knew is that he had parents, and if we're going by the continuity of the first Hulk movie, one unfortunately got killed, and the other one was a psychopath that kind of turned him into what he is. But as far as we knew, that was about it. But now we find out he has this whole other family that he may or may not be in contact with. I don't think they do. It's not quite clear.
I mean, given how long he was on the run for, it doesn't surprise me in the least that, he wasn't really keeping up with them. But now that he's looked on much more positively by society these days, I imagine he's picked up, with them.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I can't talk to my family, I'll put them in danger. It's the same reason why he kind of broke up with Betty and doesn't see her anymore, so I guess I can understand in that sense. But it does just surprise me just how much family he had. And, it turns out him and Jennifer just meet up. But then, like I said, randomly appearing spaceship happens, and they end up in a car crash a la Doctor Strange. Except, instead of crippling their hands, we have blood cross-contamination. So pretty much what happened in The Incredible Hulk with his blood getting onto, I guess, that was that one guy with he was that villain that never came about ever again. So I guess just the mere touch of his blood can cause anyone to become a Hulk. Or, she was bleeding too, so I guess that makes sense. But yeah, she becomes a Hulk, so Bruce takes it upon himself to whisk her away to his secret base over in Mexico that he has, apparently.
He's got a man cave.
He has a man cave.
Or a Hulk cave, I guess.
Dude, he has a good setting. Holy shit, Tony spoiled him.
Yeah.
Then again, that's not surprising. Tony had a huge man crush on him.
Yeah.
He probably gave him, state-of-the-art everything.
So many Tony and Bruce adventures that we'll never get to see.
Dude, I totally ship it. I love their whole dynamic. I love that Tony just worships Bruce. Even though he's kind of overbearing and makes him do shit he doesn't want to do, it's you can see the love there, and I can't help but appreciate that. But yeah, Bruce wakes up Jen, tells her the bad news, and now says that she's going to have to go on this whole long journey in order to master her powers and master her inner Hulk and eventually become a superhero, because, if Bruce's story is anything to go by, that's going to be the default for every other Hulk creature, I guess. But that's not how it goes. Turns out that the way her Hulkness works is that she can actually control it. She actually is very good at controlling her Hulk side, for the most part. Obviously, when she gets really intensely angry, she still transforms, but for the most part, she can actually transform at will. And not only that, she retains her consciousness. So that's a real big thing there. So that kind of cuts his whole training regimen in half. And pretty much from here on out, it's her just learning to control her strength, discovering her abilities, being able to jump far, stuff that we've seen the Hulk do for the most part. However, because of Bruce's own experience, he assumes that she's going to want to live in solitude like he does. But obviously she's not going to do that because, Jen has a career, she has friends, she has family, she has an entire life. And obviously she's not going to walk away from that just because she got superpowers, especially when they're not as big a detriment as they are to Bruce.
But Bruce also seems to be under the assumption that she's going to be a superhero. I get where he's coming from. It's okay, you have superpowers and kind of like it or not, you have abilities that could help people, and she really doesn't want that. It's kind of refreshing, actually.
It's kind of hypocritical on Bruce's part because when you think about it, they practically had to drag him into the action in the first Avengers movie. And it's honestly surprised that he even showed up for, like, the second Avengers. Because we know that Bruce doesn't like the limelight. We know he's technically still being hunted by Ross and whoever the fuck else wants to take advantage of his condition. So he's not in a good place for that stuff. And yeah, things get better from over time once the Avengers become, celebrities, and especially after they save the world after the blip and everything. But even so, the trauma's all there. So you would think Bruce would take that into consideration, that, he really shouldn't be forcing someone to be a superhero if they don't want to, given he himself never intended to be a superhero. He kind of just got dragged into it, and that's essentially what he does with Jen, which really isn't fair.
And she literally fights him on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't blame her for kicking his ass. I get what he's trying to do. He's been through this bullshit before. He doesn't want her to go down the same path, getting depressed to the point where he did, where he actually tried to commit suicide. I get he doesn't want all that bad stuff for her and is trying to prevent it, but at the same time, he recognizes that her situation isn't the same as his own. But he keeps trying to one-up her, and he acts condescending to her, like saying she doesn't know what she's talking about. She doesn't know the true meaning of controlling her anger. And that kind of leads to the big elephant in the room we're going to have to address, because everybody's talked about this, and of course certain people have complained about it as well. So I think we should share our 2 cents on what we think of it. As you probably figured, the thing I'm talking about is Jen's whole speech about what it means for her as a woman to control her anger. She does this whole monologue about how she knows what it's like to control her anger. As a woman, she gets harassed, she gets catcalled, she gets threatened on a daily basis. And it's actually infinitely worse because she's a lawyer. Even though this is like, the 21st century and whatever, people still think women are inferior to men, especially in careers like law and justice and everything. Trust me, I've dealt with lawyers through my job, and even if you're not a woman, they're still very condescending. It's just infinitely worse when you're a woman. I've seen a lot of people argue that, she's minimizing his trauma, trying to make it so that she has it so much worse than him, even though he grew up with abused parents, was pursued and shot at by the government, had to watch his friends die, and so on and so forth. I didn't get that from her speech. She recognized that he's gone through a lot of shit that he honestly hasn't really dealt with properly. But the thing is, she was trying to point out that, again, he's using his own experience to minimize hers, and that's not right. He's purposely trying to keep her out of the limelight, even though it's very obvious that she doesn't need to. She has a good grip on this. He's given her the tools she needs, but now he's just being overbearing and controlling about it and just not taking her feelings into account. It's all about being condescending and everything. That's what she was pointing out to him, because the female experience is real and everything. We too get harassed on a daily basis just by virtue of how we look, just by virtue of having boobs, just by virtue of being smaller than men for the most part. And it sucks, because think about it, if Bruce didn't have the trauma, if he didn't have superpowers, if he didn't go through all that shit, he was just a regular guy, he would just be a man with anger issues. And we've seen what men with anger issues do. He would be nowhere near sympathetic. But Jen, even if she didn't have any powers or wasn't a lawyer or whatever, she'd still receive the same treatment by virtue of being a woman. That is where the difference is. Do you have any 2 cents to throw in on all this?
No, I'm in agreement with you. It's like, yeah, women have to struggle so much harder than men to, be accepted for who they are. It's disgusting. It needs to change. They have, every right to be angry, and yet they can't really utilize a proper outlet for that because of how society's views on women are. It's so frustrating. I can only imagine just how frustrating it is for you and for other women, but it needs to change.
Trust me, I've suffered all of what she said. I've been catcalled, I've been harassed, I've been threatened. I literally worked at a job where I was objectified by men, and had men that I worked with who would talk to me different than they would their male coworkers. I've been there. I know what it's like. And I know what it's like having to maintain your anger for the sake of both keeping your job and just maintaining your personal safety. It sucks. Trust me, it sucks. I would love nothing more than to beat the shit out of certain people at times for the way they speak to me, for the way they treat me, at times even when they try to physically harm me. But I can't because I'm a 5-foot-tall white girl that, let's be real, could get her ass kicked easily, but acts tough to compensate. So I know what it's like. I know what it is to have to really rein yourself in for the sake of safety. For all you people out there that say no, that she doesn't know what she's talking about, she's trying to make herself the victim compared to Bruce, that she's like disregarding him, no, trust me. What she's talking about is real.
Yeah.
And we even see it later on in the bar scene. She, of course, blacks out after the first time she transforms. She ends up in this bar. She's trying to find a way to contact Bruce. She encounters some of the friendliest bathroom women I've ever seen. Seriously, they see her and they think she's like a domestic abuse victim. They're like, oh girl, you gotta leave his ass. And then they're like, giving her like clothes and makeup and stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And I appreciate that, showing, women helping each other in that regard. But of course, as soon as she leaves and goes outside, that's when a group of guys see her, and of course they try to chat her up, even though it's obvious she wants to be left alone. And she even uses the whole, I have a boyfriend line, and they still won't leave her alone. Saying I have a boyfriend, saying I have a husband, that's usually code for leave me the fuck alone. But they don't get it, so of course she goes fucking Hulk again. So like I said, this was a decent first episode. Like, honestly, this episode did what Miss Marvel should have. Just established her and then made her the hero that we know. Instead of taking, 6 long-ass episodes to do that. And I know it might seem a little quick and abrupt, but like I said, after what we've been experiencing last show, this was, again, a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, we want to get to the action already.
Yeah, because we know what's coming. We know that there's more interesting stuff down the line. And honestly, Jen doesn't really have that many hang-ups to delve into. It's like, yes, she has the unfortunate experience of being a woman in law and thus being treated different by virtue of her gender. But other than that, seems to lead a pretty good life. I mean, she has her own friends and stuff, and in fact, she's so comfortable with her friends and family and everything, she automatically tells them about her superhero identity, which, again, is refreshing. Because I know a lot of heroes don't do that because they don't want to put their loved ones in danger, they don't want to make them targets or have them potentially involve themselves in superhero work and stuff, but she's like, no, fuck it. I'm She-Hulk, I can do this, so just, now you know.
She's under the impression, though, that the Hulk isn't going to get in the way of her job. However...
Yeah, she gets all worked up and, is all prepared to, give this closing speech to this big, high-profile case and stuff. You know she's gonna win it, she's that damn good. And then just randomly appearing supervillain. Seriously, the villain comes right the fuck out of nowhere, just bursts through the wall like a fucking Kool-Aid man, and all the proceedings get interrupted, and then she's like, I guess I have to handle this. Goes She-Hulk, takes her out immediately. So that was her big premiere, I guess. So yeah, after the first episode, we have no idea who this villain is, we have no idea why she's attacking this courtroom, and we don't know why Jen didn't just go off to the side, transform, and come back. Because honestly, I feel she really should have done that, because it would have saved her a bit of a headache for what comes in the next episode, which is titled
Superhuman Law.
The hero that bursts through the wall and interrupts proceedings is named Titania, who's played by
Jamila Jamil.
Yeah, or I always call her Tahani because that's how I know her best from The Good Place. I guess she was on trial for something and then just tried to escape and just happened to burst into the courtroom
that, or she was involved in whatever case that or somebody she knew was involved in the case that Jennifer was involved in, and she came to interrupt it.
Maybe,
whatever.
but I'm just going by what they said on the news thing, and they said that she was in like her own case situation and tried to escape, but I don't know. It's confusing and it goes by so fast you don't really catch it. And she only has like I think one line.
Yeah.
So
like,
I was.
Who the are you?
Yes, I was like really baffled by that because from what I heard, Titania is supposed to be like a big bad guy who comes back later on. Even more baffling, from what I read, Titania is actually stronger than She-Hulk. Yet she gets whacked around like a rag doll, and then that's it.
I mean, she wasn't exactly expecting it.
True.
So she was caught off guard.
I also think because from what I heard, Jamila got hurt during the fight scene, so I guess they had to
work around that.
They either had to work around it or cut most of it down just because, again, she got injured. So that would explain why she doesn't show up for the rest of the episode. Even so, that was like fucking random as all hell. But again, they're trying to get the whole thing of her like origin out of the way, I guess. Because now that the jury and everyone knows that she's She-Hulk, all the shit goes down. So on the one hand, she's being praised for saving the jurors from the evil supervillain and everything. But on the other hand, because of both her and the villain's antics, the whole thing is considered a mistrial, which honestly isn't that bad. It's not a loss. It just means they have to do everything all over again just with a new jury. But the problem is, because everyone knows who she is now, because they know what she's done, they're going to automatically be biased in her favor no matter what the case is. That kind of screws up things for them, so they unfortunately have to fire her. I thought that was a bit much, but as we see when she goes to all these other law firms to try to get a job, some of them try to just like, you know, hee-haw around it, being like, oh, well, we're not hiring now, while others are just flat out, dude, we don't want the publicity of this.
She is kind of a liability at this point.
Yeah, I can see why, but it still sucks, though, that, again, because we've been seeing this, even as far back as Falcon Winter Soldier, that these heroes, you know, most of whom are responsible for saving the Earth multiple times, are still being treated by shit by all these entities and the government and stuff. What was it? Falcon can't get a loan from the bank even though, you know, he helped save the Earth. And then She-Hulk saves an entire jury, but now she can't get hired by any sort of law firm because they believe that any juror would, like, automatically be in favor of her.
Well, it's not even just that. She's a liability, too, because she could be attracting supervillains or just unwanted attention in the courtroom.
Right.
That could hold things up. That could put anybody in the court in danger.
Right.
So I feel for her, but I also see the argument.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, they can work around that. I mean, they could get her a desk job or something else, working elsewhere. She doesn't have to particularly be in the courtroom. And I know that's what she is mostly trying to do, but there was workarounds for it. It just kind of feels unfair in the grand scheme of things. It's like, why bother saving people if you're just going to get punished for it? It's kind of like with the whole deal with Spider-Man, too. It's like, yeah, he does this for the sake of responsibility, but then he gets lambasted by the press and everything, and there's half the people that think he's a hero and half that thinks he's a dangerous vigilante. It's like, there's no fucking winning.
Well, I mean, it's like that argument that superheroes tend to cause a lot of collateral damage.
Well,
it's
that
like,
I agree
yeah,
with.
they might be helping everybody, but while they're trying to help everybody, they're either messing things up or the villains are messing things up. And
yeah, as far as the American economy is concerned, they're not worth the trouble.
Like I said, it's kind of a liability. It's like, yes, I appreciate everything you've done, but at the same time, you're also kind of inadvertently causing or attracting the problems.
And this is how you get more supervillains.
Yeah.
This is why half the X-Men are considered dangerous, because, you know, they go through shit like this on a daily basis. So you think that things are going to not go well for Jen, but it turns out her competition actually ends up hiring her, the guys that they went up against in court, because had the whole thing with the villain not happened, she definitely would have won her case. So you're thinking, okay, so they recognize her talent based on herself, not on She-Hulk. And not only that, but they recognize her publicity as a good thing, so they'll be able to use her to their advantage. But nope. Turns out the reason they want her is specifically for She-Hulk. In particular, they want her to head the branch that represents superhumans, because, as they mentioned, All these new ones have been coming out of the woodwork since Endgame. Obviously, a lot of them have been getting into trouble this way or that. They want someone to represent them, and of course, the best person to represent a superhuman is a superhuman. So on the one hand, that kind of sucks because that means she's being taken advantage of strictly for her powers, not for her knowledge of the law. But on the other hand, it's a specialized position. It'll gain her notoriety, it'll get her good clients, and it pays her a lot, and she can basically do what she wants. So, it's kind of
Well, I mean, at this point, it's really all she's got.
Yeah, I mean, she honestly has no other choice.
Yeah.
And it's not helped by the fact that her family gives her shit about it, too. Like, oh god, her family.
Mm.
I sort of see now why Bruce doesn't really associate with them much.
They'd probably turn him into the Hulk every time he encountered them.
To be fair, her dad's not that bad. He's, like, a bit on the dumber side, but he's at least supportive for the most part. At least he actually checks in on her after all this shit happens, just to make sure she's okay. But the other family members, her cousin's like, dude, you got fired. It's like, why would you fucking say that? And then her mom, oh god, her mom can fuck herself. She brings home a pie or whatever, and she's like, oh, you brought a pie. You know that'll do awful things to your waistline. It's like, fuck you then, you don't get pie. Why would you say that to someone who brings a dessert? So I don't blame her in that regard. But I mean, at least she has people in her corner, and at least her friend, who's like her, what is that, the legal? Paralegal,
yeah.
At least stays by her side.
Yeah, she insisted that she get to choose her own paralegal. Granted, the new boss didn't really care. He's like, you choose whoever you want, I don't care.
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, he's honest about it.
And again, like, he's still providing her with good stuff. I know that's probably ended up biting her in the ass later on, because we see even as he escorts her in the office, it's clear a lot of people straight up don't like her by virtue of her notoriety and her powers and stuff, and the fact that she's getting her own specialized office with a high salary, while a lot of them probably have had to work up to that point. So I can see in that regard, and again, it sucks because, it puts her in this position that's like, I should be happy about this, but everyone hates me, so,
And then there's her first client.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, so right out the woodwork, her very first client that she has to represent or she doesn't have a job is Emil Blonsky, a.k.a. Abomination. And I know a lot of y'all who didn't watch Marvel in the early days probably are like, who the fuck's this guy? Yeah, he was one of the very first villains that Hulk fought, or at least the other Hulk fought, way back during the premiere of Iron Man.
Back when he was a completely different person.
Literally. So yeah, you can see how baffling this decision is, because one, it's a conflict of interest given that she's related to the man that Emil Blonsky is accused of trying to kill. But on the other hand, legal mumbo bullshit, whatever, he's claiming he's a brand new person. That was decades ago, which kind of it was at this point when you think about it.
It's over a decade ago.
Yeah,
that was like, what, 2008, 2009?
Yeah, that was like, what, almost 15 years?
And then, of course, add in the blip.
Yeah. So they're arguing that, he's a new guy, he's gone through stuff to better himself, and that he just wants to make amends and just finally get out of prison. Obviously, this is an awkward situation, but she agrees to meet with him, so we see Tim Roth for the first time in God knows how long. I know he hasn't been dead in terms of his career. I've looked it up, and I've seen he's done stuff. He was even in Twin Peaks for a while.
But I remember he was big back when the first Hulk movie, and we'll call it, at least in the MCU, back in the late 2000s.
Yeah.
I remember he was like, what was he in, like, Lie to Me? And he was in a few things all over the place.
Yeah.
So he was a big name back then, but he kind of petered out in his acting roles.
Yeah, I mean, he technically came back to be Abomination in Shang-Chi, but that was just a voice. We didn't actually see him transform back, so I don't really count it. But in this case, we see him straight up as he is human. And like Bruce, he's actually learned to control his anger, control that part of him that makes him transform. And yeah, it is kind of like a weird Silence of the Lambs situation. They even poke fun at it. They even put him in like one of those Loki cells you see in Avengers or whatever. But here's the thing, he actually makes a compelling argument for why he should be released. He had reached out to people to apologize. He had been working on himself. He pointed out the fact that he was a soldier from Russia that was taken advantage of by the U.S. government and was given this serum that has been proven to have deadly side effects. So, in a way, it really wasn't his fault that he went down that path. And I kind of agree.
It's more a crime that Ross isn't in the cell instead of him.
I will not for the life of me ever be able to figure out how that man has not been court-martialed, has not been arrested, has not had people try to constantly kill him for the shit that he's done. Not just in terms of Bruce, but all other superhuman beings. I mean, the whole Sokovia Court thing happened because of him. So yeah, that baffles me. And I kind of feel for the guy too. Like, on the one hand, they do portray him rather antagonistically in the Hulk movie, that, you know, he wanted the juice, he wanted to turn himself into that, and, you know, he didn't care about the side effects, but, like, on the other hand, they were, like, gradually giving him this shit, and as we've seen, with the very exception of Steve Rogers, every other person that's ever had the super soldier serum has either A, died, or B, gone mad. I shouldn't say just Steve, because it was also, what was his name from Falcon Winter Soldier? Isaiah. Again, it was him and Steve that are the very few exceptions where the super serum worked. The government knew this.
And even if they didn't go mad, they still got screwed over in the end.
Yeah, because even when the government saw that they weren't outright killed, seeing the adverse side effects and knowing that was proof against them, they swept it under the rug. We wouldn't have known anything about Isaiah's, like, past or any of that if it weren't for Falcon Winter Soldier. So like I said, for Emil Blonsky, he actually has a genuine case, which Jen recognizes and is actually willing to represent. She even get Bruce's approval on it, too. And he actually is cool as well, because Emil sent him a nice haiku apologizing and stuff.
As we finally get that resolved, we were kind of wondering, so does this take place before or after Shang-Chi?
Yeah, as soon as I saw him, I'm like, wait, was this before or after the whole underground fight thing? The way it looks, I think it happens during. Because you would think that someone would have noticed that he got out of prison and then went back in or something. But I think that the footage just leaked as Shang-Chi was happening, so that's going to cause, like, a complication in their case, because, you know, escaping prison, even if you are innocent, is still a bad thing. That'll be interesting to see how they handle that. And a part of me thinks they're going to call in Wong, because when you think about it, the reason he probably most likely was able to escape is because Wong broke him out to do this shit. And it's like, why would Wong do this?
Remember, Wong was kind of manipulating the fight.
Right, I know he was doing that, but how did he meet Abomination? How did they come to this arrangement? Why was he cool with breaking this potentially dangerous prisoner out? Like, I know he could handle him, given his powers and stuff, but I don't know. I kind of hope he shows up just to sort of, like, justify and clarify a few things. Because it would kind of be a dick move of him not to. Meanwhile, Bruce is out in space. Yeah, I guess that ship that tried to intercept them before came back for him later, and is now sending him off to God knows where, probably wherever the fuck Fury's been hanging out this whole time. Probably wherever, what's her name, Monica went. So I guess it's like the Skrull base, or where Sword is based, or wherever the fuck everything's taking place. Because I know they keep, like, every show so far has been gesturing that there's, like, a secret thing going up in space, especially involving the, what were they called again? The shapeshifters?
The Skrulls.
The Skrulls, yeah. So, like, we know secret invasion's gonna be a thing, so I guess this is building toward it. It's just interesting that is happening at this point in this series. But yeah, so that was episode 1 and 2 of She-Hulk, and I gotta say I enjoyed it. It's very straightforward, very simplified. Like I said, they get the whole origin shit out of the way nice and early, so we have the next, how many, like, 6 episodes?
7.
7?
This is supposed to be 9 total.
Right, so we have the next 7 episodes just to have fun and see how she deals with all these superior clients, see her fight, and, you know, build up, hopefully, Titania, if she's going to be the big baddie and everything, and just see her adventures of superheroes, something we should have been seeing with Miss Marvel. And yeah, like with past Marvel stuff, they're not releasing the episodes early, like the episode titles, I should say, which is fine. I'm pretty certain that each episode's going to be singularly focused on, you know, each thing. So obviously the next episode, we're going to see the court case involving Emil, find out how the hell that whole arrangement happened, how he met up with Wong, you know, why they've been doing that, and maybe we'll see an appearance by Titania or some other villain. There's a lot of potential with this, and again, I really do appreciate them making this more of a traditional TV series and just not padding it with all this stupid shit that we've been seeing so far with other shows. Anything you want to add in regards to that?
No, like, I'm hoping it's like court case of a day sort of thing. Maybe we get a few different court cases montaged in like an episode or two. It feels like an actual series versus, you know, we get caught on one story. A little more anthological, I guess, even though it's still more serialized.
It would be an interesting way to bring back, as well as introduce new characters and stuff to the scenario, like either villains we haven't seen in a while that were just shoved away, or get like new villains that will become prominent threats either in this series or later on. Like, there's a lot they can do with it.
It does also raise the potential for a She-Hulk and Daredevil crossover.
I did hear rumors about that. Everyone's been saying that they're going to make that one Daredevil series canon in this universe, which they honestly should have done from the beginning. It's nice to see that they're still incorporating that, because, I mean, we already sort of did that with Hawkeye, with them bringing Kingpin into the mix. So now all that's really left is to bring in Daredevil. And yes, we saw him.
We saw Matt Mercer in Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah, we saw his cameo there, but now we're getting legit Daredevil. And if, again, what the trailer we saw was any indication, he's definitely going to make an appearance in this. And I mean, given he's a lawyer, it only makes sense. Where is She-Hulk, like, taking place?
It looks like it's Los Angeles.
So it's Los Angeles. So we have West Coast lawyer
versus an East Coast
lawyer.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord, that'll be interesting. One last thing I did want to note, though, and I think it was a little bit of an odd choice. I'm not complaining about it per se, it's just odd to me. The whole Malcolm in the Middle talk to the fourth wall type narrative. Because on the one hand, like, we've seen it before, you know, we have a character narrating their experience and stuff. I mean, we just saw Miss Marvel did exactly that. But in this case, she's, like, talking directly to the camera, a la Malcolm in the Middle. And, yeah, we saw that before in WandaVision, but there it made sense, because they technically were imitating Malcolm in the Middle style, like, 90s sitcom or whatever. In this one, it feels, I don't know, a little strange.
I don't know, it didn't really bother me too much, especially because they didn't really do it a whole lot.
Yeah, they didn't, but at the one point where she's, like, walking through the office and she starts talking, I'm like, wait, is she talking to him or talking to the audience?
I mean, she's certainly breaking the fourth wall so that she can give us the origin story, and she's like, okay, that's out of the way, we'll move on. And then, yeah, when she's walking through the office with her boss, I think she's monologuing to herself, soliloquizing. I mean, honestly, I don't really have an issue with it. It's a quick thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal. I just thought it was a bit of an odd choice. And I mean, when I've seen other movies and shows do that, like, a lot of the time it's inadvertently funny. The best example I can think of is when they did a film version of Othello, and it has Iago, like, talking to the fourth wall, explaining everything, which makes sense, because this is a Shakespeare thing, and a lot of people do soliloquies and stuff, so it makes sense. But, like, there's one point where he's, like, about to have sex with his wife, and all of a sudden he, like, sits up and looks at the camera, and then he starts doing a monologue, and I'm like, dude, what the fuck? You're about to, like, bone someone, and you stop and just give this whole big speech that has nothing to do with what you're about to do. In cases like that, I think it's really funny.
It might just be more for pacing, keep the show, you know, moving along.
Yeah, because the pacing in this is very quick.
Yes.
But it's not so quick that it's a bad thing. 'Cause like I said, we've dealt with so much, like, padding and stuff from others that this feels a lot better. But I do hope they slow down a bit, because like I said, they went through the whole Titania thing so fast. I barely caught any of that, and we still have no idea what she's like, what she does, or her situation. So I'm hoping they save that for later. We actually get proper introduction and whatnot. But yeah, with that being said, from here on out, we will be doing live reactions to everything. So episodes 3 through 9, like I said, live reactions. We'll do our best to keep up on stuff. Again, I apologize for the noise out there. We're going to do our best to soundproof everything. Keep in mind we are in an apartment, so there's only so much we can do without, literally ruining the walls and windows and whatnot. Like I said, we'll be experimenting with everything behind us, so things might look a little different later on, and we'll keep you informed about future stuff we plan to do. Like I said, this has been a tough year. It's been a rather tough transition. We're kind of taking this almost one day at a time, just trying to settle in. And we apologize for people out there who have been recommending that we do certain things, that we watch certain shows and whatnot. It's just at this moment, it's just too difficult for us to deal with as much as we want to. For me, because like I said, I still have the backlog. I intended to get it out of the way before we moved. It just didn't work that way. So you'll be seeing these episodes like every other backlog episode. So it'll kind of feel disjointed and confusing, but I'm doing what I can. We're honestly just doing what we can at this point. One last note though, we are watching Hamster and Gretel, just because I was curious since people were talking about it. We seem to like it so far. It's not something worth a live reaction. It's not something that we can do even like every 2 episodes or something. This is something I think we're just going to wait till the end of the season and then talk about it if we decide that it's worth really talking about. But again, that's future Kat and Doug's problem. With that being said, till next we meet up in court, I'm Kat MacBerrie.
I'm Doug MacBerrie.
Single female lawyer fighting for her clients, wearing sexy miniskirts and being self-reliant.